Unsung Murder Ballads discusses topics of a disturbing nature.
And we're not going to hold back on the graphic details and disturbing content.
So we do not recommend our podcast for children under the age of 13.
And while we respect the victims and their families involved in these tragic cases,
we're also going to be critical of mistakes that are made during the investigations.
And we're going to use dark humor to express ourselves now and then.
So with that said, this podcast may not be for everyone.
And that's okay. We're glad you're here checking us out.
And if you've made it this far, welcome to the Unsung Murder Ballads family. And follow us on Instagram at Unsung Murder Ballads if you want to talk to us.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Unsung Murder Ballads. This is episode 122. I am Janice Dead.
I'm Jameson Dead.
And I'm Joyous Dead.
All right, so tonight we have a new episode, but before we go forward, I do want to say that we posted the teaser for the last episode, and one of our listeners actually guessed the correct episode. So congratulations to you. I don't remember your name off the top of my head, but that was awesome.
That's pretty cool.
I know, it's the first time it's ever happened, although I'm not surprised that it happened to a For Joyous's Information episode.
True.
Because, I mean...
It's still impressive.
It is, especially because it was L.A., and you know how many famous serial killers came out of L.A.?
Yeah, I'm kidding.
And the fact that they guessed the Night Stalker was pretty impressive, although I didn't tell them at the time that that's what it was.
Wow. All right. Well, come on, aficionados. They're listening.
I know, right? Come on. Now you got to guess the other ones that are lesser known, the unsung ones of our unsung ballads.
Yes.
So tonight is another one of those. I would say it's a half unsung. It's not as well known here in the U.S., but it is one of the biggest cases to come out of Belgium.
Oh, interesting.
Yes, this one. When I was doing that roulette episode where we were taking episodes from cases from around the world. This one was on the list, but then when I dug deep, I was like, "Oh, this is way too big to be condensed down to anything less than a single episode." So
wow, all right.
But before we dive into it, I have a teaser, but first I have a question that's gonna kind of set up my teaser.
Okay.
I know we are all three of us Star Wars fans. Do you guys understand the Sith rule of 2?
There's always a master and an apprentice.
There is, but do you know why it exists?
No, I do not.
I feel like I should know this too.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a very brief Star Wars canonical history of why there's only ever 2 Sith as of the movies. And it's because hundreds of years or thousands of years before the movies, there was a Sith named Darth Bane. And he watched the Sith Empire tear itself apart while they're fighting the Jedi, they're also fighting each other. And he realized that was the problem with the Sith, is they were all so ambitious that they would destroy themselves from within. So he helped kind of exacerbate and destroy the Sith, and then he made the rule that there would only ever be a master and an apprentice, and that's how it was for the thousands of years leading into the films.
Right, because you have to centralize power because it's all just a metaphor for fascism.
Correct, basically. So as we go on to this, as we go into my teaser here, it perfectly encapsulates why these types of people rarely work together in groups. Like criminals.
Oh, interesting.
Yes. So with that said, 2 criminal partners suspected that 2 of their accomplices had betrayed them. As a result, and wishing to interrogate them, they lured their 2 accomplices to one of their homes. Once there, they drugged the accomplices and sequestered them before leaving to go and search one of the houses of one of these suspected accomplices. You know, they're looking for clues to see that they betrayed them.
Oh, shit.
Right? It's ridiculous. This is just the beginning of how crazy this gets.
The paranoia.
So once at one of their houses, they find one of these accomplices' girlfriends. So they take her back with them to be questioned. They leave the girlfriend alone just long enough for her to escape, and she alerts a neighbor who calls the police. So now, they know they're pursued by the police, so one of these 2 partners decides the other partner has to go. He has to kill him. And he decides this because he's trying to prevent his own capture. My point of this is the betrayal, the paranoia, you can't trust anyone, but yet they brought all these people in. Morons. So, with that said, this is the twisted case of Marc Dutroux and a crime spree that rocked Belgium.
I've never heard of this one.
And I would say most people from the U.S. have not. But obviously, this is one of the craziest cases in Belgium's history. And I do need to do an additional trigger warning because this case does involve the sexual abuse of children.
Ugh.
I know, it sucks.
Fuck.
I know, I'm sorry.
Oh, man, I was just like, just like some accomplices. Like maybe they were bank robbers and then they killed each other. A girl can hope.
This reminds me of like the Snowtown murders and the family murders in Australia, where a number of people doing these kinds of crimes should not be working together, and yet here we are. Okay, so here we go. Marc Dutroux was born in Ixelles, Brussels on November 6, 1956, to Victor and Janine Dutroux. He was the eldest of 5 children. Dutroux spent part of his early childhood in Burundi, then part of the Belgian Congo, where his father worked as a teacher. After Burundi, after they gained their independence in mid-1962, Dutroux's family moved back to Belgium and settled in the village of Obiax. Dutroux later reported to have been abused by his mother and father. In 1971 or 72, depending upon your source, his parents separated and his father left the family home. Shortly after graduating from school, Dutroux left home himself and started making his living as an electrician. However, when that didn't work out, he began a criminal career as a mugger, a car thief, and a drug dealer. You know, the usual side hustles.
I mean, of the things to do, it's better than murder.
It is. And when we get to the murder, I think the murders were... I think it escalated to in a way that I don't know how many options they felt they had.
Oof.
His car theft would include smuggling luxury cars out of Belgium to Hungary and Czechoslovakia. The profits from this lead him to buying numerous properties in and around Brussels. Several years later, in 1976, Dutroux married Françoise Dubois, with whom he had 2 children. The marriage was marred by Dutroux's abusive behavior towards his family. The couple would divorce in 1983 due to Dutroux having an affair with a school teacher named Michelle Martin. Now, keep her in your back pocket for the moment.
All right, tucked away.
Dutroux's wife, Françoise, would keep custody of their children, lucky for her and for them. So during the late 1970s, Dutroux found new employment as a scrap dealer and supplemented his income by stealing car parts.
I mean, at this point, he owns multiple properties. I don't see why he needs to still be doing crimes.
Well, we'll get into that because he does. By the end of this, he'll own 7 different properties.
Well, damn.
Wow.
And most of which he's not renting out, which is bizarre.
What?
Yeah, that is very bizarre. Loves doing crimes.
Yes. So from 1979 onward, he was convicted for a variety of petty offenses, including assault, drug dealing, and trading stolen vehicles. Meanwhile, he regularly visited ice skating rinks in Charleroi and Forest, where he would deliberately trip or bump into young female skaters in order to touch them.
Ew.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's one of those pervs.
Gross. I hate to hear that from someone who has kids, someone who should really fucking care about the well-being of children.
Absolutely. 100% agree with you. In October of 1983, Dutroux visited a Charleroi skating rink and got into a physical altercation with another patron named Armand Deben after repeatedly colliding into his girlfriend. A court case ended up with Deben being convicted of assault and battery against Dutroux.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, although he himself was banned from going to these ice skating rinks.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, very good. Now his mistress, Michelle Martin, he marries her, and they would go on to have 3 children together.
What the fuck?
Yeah, well, this woman is going to be one of his accomplices. So
Go figure.
Yeah, keep that in mind too. So they have 3 children, and I got to be honest, I can't really tell you in the research that I found and everything I've looked into, I don't know where their 3 kids are during all this.
Oh, I hope they're with family or something.
Yeah. So as we go into this next part, understand that the names of the victims in this section were not fully released, as some of them were minors at the time, and Belgium protects the identities of victims, at least at this point in time. But before we do that, we have to go into one of Dutroux' accomplices, Jean van Peteghem. He lived with Dutroux after being discharged from the military and his marriage failing. He told police that his and Dutroux' first victims were two girls, neither of which police were ever able to find or, find any missing persons reports on.
Oh,
so there's a question about that one.
Were they runaways?
We'll get to that part later, as we always do.
ugh, Lord.
Then later, on October 17th, 1985, these two abducted 19-year-old Maria V, as she's known. And Maria V, she would later identify that there was a third man who took part in her abduction, who appeared to be in his 50s. But again, police were never able to find anything about a third man. So on December 14th, 1985, Dutroux and this other accomplices of his abducted a girl known as Excel D. During her testimony, she told police that Dutroux' accomplice, Peteghem, had told her that he was part of a gang. And he opens up to this little girl for some reason.
Weird.
Yeah, he would later admit that he took part in this abduction. Now, he later stated that he had abducted Excel with Dutroux and his wife, Michelle Martin.
Whoa.
On December 18th, 1980...
This is a mother and a father abducting children together.
Correct. To assault.
That's so
fucked.
twisted.
Insanely fucked.
On December 18th, 1985, Dutroux abducted a girl that was known as Elizabeth G., who was only 15. Now, his accomplice told police that Dutroux filmed her naked and took pictures of her.
Okay.
So again, these things start to escalate.
Ugh, as they always do.
On January 17th, 1986, they abducted 18-year-old Catherine B., or at least that's how she's known, and one or two of his accomplices in her abduction was also never caught or found. So she's talking about there being even more than just what we know.
He's just grabbing. He must have a fucking network of nasty bitches.
That's my guess. Peteghem was stationed as an army personnel in Germany during that abduction. And so as the police were looking into this later, it's kind of proven out that he could not have assisted Dutroux in this Catherine B.'s abduction.
Mm-hmm.
So it's other men, which is, again, blows my mind. Let's just keep opening the door and letting people, you know what I mean? If you're going to be a criminal like this, you shouldn't have this many people that can turn you in. Just saying.
Exactly.
Totally insane.
At the beginning of February 1986, Dutroux, Martin, and Peteghem were finally arrested. Now, this had been due in large extent to Peteghem giving out a lot of information about himself in his conversation with these girls that they were taking. And police were able to get enough from that to identify him.
Wow.
Now, the three were eventually convicted on April 26, 1989. Dutroux received 13 and a half years.
What?
13 and a half years.
That's all?
For the abduction and rape of 6 or 7 children. Yeah, that's all.
Yeah, that's a joke.
Peteghem received 6.5 years. And Martin received 5 years.
What the fuck?
What?
Yeah. They go on to say that Dutroux received a harsher sentence because he had also committed several robberies. Yeah. Has nothing to do...
What the fuck?
Yeah, exactly. Has nothing to do with the abduction and assault of children. It's fucked up.
That's crazy. This is stuff like that is a genuine, these people are not safe to have in society, and we need to keep them out of it.
Agreed.
And that's one of the biggest justifications for having a prison system at all.
110%. Although as we keep going, you're going to get even more pissed.
Great.
So one of the other crimes Dutroux was convicted of was the robbery of a 58-year-old woman, which was described as brutal.
Ugh.
And this was also committed with accomplices that were never identified and never caught by police. And as it happens so many times here in the U.S., Dutroux is released early on good behavior.
I hate that.
He served only 3 years.
Are you
Oh my God.
fucking kidding me?
No, 3 years out of 13 and a half.
That's fucking insane.
His release was ordered against the advice of both the public prosecutor and the psychiatrist who examined him in prison, who stated that Dutroux remained extremely dangerous and called him a psychopath.
What the hell is going on here?
I don't know. It's Belgium in the 80s. That's all I can say.
Belgium, what's going on?
While in jail, Dutroux managed to convince a health professional that he was disabled due to a mental illness, which,
God fucking damn it.
As a result, he was able to collect public assistance consisting of $1,200 a month from the Belgian government.
No. No, that's not okay.
Well, I mean, in prison, he's on public assistance anyway.
Right, but now he's getting it now that they've released him early.
Yeah, I hate it.
And he also convinced professionals that he needed to be prescribed sedatives for sleeping problems, and unsurprisingly, Dutroux would later use them against his victims. He would sedate his victims.
Oh, God.
Fucking God.
Yeah. And we thought the U.S. was bad.
Yeah, this is pretty bad.
Yeah, this is awful. So, at this point, he owns 7 small houses, most of which are vacant, and he begins to use 3 of them to abduct, detain, and torture girls that he's kidnapping.
Jesus fucking Christ.
Oh, my God.
There's no, probation. There's no one, checking up on him.
Nope. And he's still receiving the state-assisted stipend, and that wasn't reduced once I don't even know if they knew that he owned 7 properties.
Oh, that's infuriating. These poor fucking children.
Probably not. I mean, if he's still getting it.
Yeah, this is one of the most fucked up things I've heard. And
because that's one of the things in the U.S. is they will determine what your assets are, and if you own too many assets, you can't get public assistance.
Right, but that's not happening in this instance. Yeah,
that's fucked. It's fucked. I guess it's probably harder without the internet, but I hate it.
That's true too. So, in his residence in Marcinelle, he constructed a concealed dungeon in the basement.
God, no.
Now,
how much time does this guy have on his hands?
He's not.
He's on public assistance. It doesn't have to fucking work.
Exactly. And I got to tell you, I've seen videos of what this dungeon looked like and how it worked, and this thing was made incredibly well.
Oh no!
That's just sick.
He managed to build the door so that it pulled away from the wall completely. It's like on runners that go into the dungeon, so you can't see them from outside. You pull the door back and it slides on runners, okay? The wall and the outer part of the door itself is covered in concrete and painted so that when it's closed, you can barely see it. But it has...
Oh, God.
But it has shelves mounted to the door, so that helps conceal it even further, and that's what you use to pull it on the runner.
Oh.
Now, the cell is only like 5 feet by 3 feet. It's barely big. It's probably smaller than a prison cell.
It's hardly big enough for someone to lay down.
Yeah, it's barely the size of a closet. It's probably a little longer than a normal closet. But yeah, that's about what you're getting. On June 24th, 1995, 8-year-old classmates.
8-year-old?
Yes. Julie Lejeune and Melissa Russo were kidnapped by Dutroux and Martine after they went out for a walk. Now, he kept them imprisoned in this dungeon, and he repeatedly sexually abused them and produced child pornography videos of this abuse.
Oh,
so
no.
Fucking disgusting.
They would be kept there for 3 months.
No.
During this time, 2 months after taking Julie and Melissa, in the early hours of August 23rd in Ostend, Dutroux and a new accomplice, Michel Liviev, kidnapped Anne Marshall and Effia Lambrex.
Ugh.
Both teenage girls were on their way back from their holiday home in West End following a night out in Blankenburg. Now, police initially dismissed the girls' parents' concerns, telling
Of course they did.
them that they would return soon, that they were just out having fun. They didn't even bother to write a report.
Oh, come
Oh,
on.
what?
Yeah. Days later, after the police doing fuck all, the parents of Anne and Effia went to a different police station and actually got some action out of them. However, those police asked the basic questions and almost dismissive ones, are they addicted to drugs? Are they living this kind of lifestyle, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And even after Anne's father went to a local newspaper begging them to put his daughter's photo on their front page, those that worked there were skeptical, believing that the girl would just return after having been partying out someplace.
That's so fucked. So fucked how these people don't get taken seriously.
It's crazy. And honestly, I really thought this was a problem just in the U.S. or maybe the U.S., Australia, and Britain, but it's everywhere.
Apparently.
Most police systems are modeled after the U.S. police system, so unfortunately.
That's
Not exactly the greatest role model.
No, certainly not. Now, with Julie and Melissa already in Dutroux's little dungeon, Effia and Anne were kept in chains in a bedroom.
Fuck. In fucking chains?
Yes. In September, according to Martine, Effia and Anne were drugged and brought to a different location where Dutroux and yet another accomplice named Bernard Weinstein raped, tortured, and killed them by burying them alive.
Oh.
What the fuck?
No. Around the time of their deaths, Weinstein, and I am not fucking kidding here, yet another man by the name of Philippe Divers stole a van and after removing the bodies, hid this van in a hangar where it was later found by that hangar's owner and taken away by police. So this is where we get...
So many people are involved.
Yeah, exactly. Now this is where we start getting into my teaser where there's too many people involved here.
How many are we up to now?
At least 5 or 6, and that's not including the unknown ones from the earlier abductions. Assuming they weren't these men, but I'm thinking it's not because as the trial goes, we kind of hear the names of people involved in these cases, not the earlier ones. But Dutroux and Weinstein suspected that Divers and his friend, an additional accomplice named Pierre Rochaud, had betrayed them. And as a result, on the night of November 4th, wishing to interrogate them about the van and what they had done with it, Dutroux and Weinstein lured Divers and Rochaud to Weinstein's home, where they drugged them and separated them for questioning, before leaving to go to Rochaud's house to search for clues about the van. There, they found Rochaud's girlfriend, Benedice Jadot, whom they took with them back to where they were keeping the other two and started questioning her, before they left again to go talk to yet another person.
Ugh.
It's ridiculous. While they were away, Benedice escaped and alerted a neighbor who called police. So Bernard Weinstein was wanted by police, so Dutroux decided he needed to kill him to prevent his own capture. So he kidnapped Weinstein and held him in the dungeon of his house.
Damn.
He held him there for a week before deciding what to do with him.
That's crazy.
Now, during that time, he allowed Julie and Melissa, those 2 8-year-olds that he had abducted, he let them roam freely around the house while he kept his own partner locked in the dungeon.
That's fucking crazy.
That's twisted.
After feeding Weinstein food laced with Rohypnol, Dutroux placed clamps around his testicles. Until Weinstein told him anything he wanted to know, including where he had hidden certain amounts of money.
Damn.
Dutroux then buried Weinstein alive.
Oh, wow.
Well, at least someone got what they deserved here.
Right? On December 6, 1995. I'll keep in mind, Dutroux then puts the girls back into his dungeon.
Ugh.
So on December 6, 1995, Dutroux was arrested for vehicle theft. Now, according to him and Martine, his wife, Julie Lejeune and Melissa Russo were still alive in the house in that dungeon when Dutroux was arrested. After they arrest him, the police go and search his home, the very home where these girls are being kept behind a hidden door leading to his dungeon.
Oh.
Now, they had a locksmith with them so that if they came upon anything, they could pick locks and get inside, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they're doing this search, and while they're in the basement, not noticing the hidden door, the locksmith says, he told police that he could hear girls screaming. The police say to him, that must be coming from outside.
Are you shitting
me?
Come on.
And they leave.
Yeah. Oh, God, they were almost saved.
Now, Dutroux had ordered Martine, his wife, to leave food and water for the girls anytime they left the house. But Martine neglected to feed them because she claimed she was too afraid to go into that dungeon.
Are you fucking kidding me?
So after Dutroux's arrest, Julie and Melissa starved to death in that dungeon.
Holy crap.
That is so fucking awful.
Now, Dutroux initially stated that the two girls were still alive when he returned home from his release on March 20th, 1996. But according to him, Julie had died the day he returned, and Melissa soon followed suit 4 days after, despite his quote-unquote efforts to save her.
Oh, bullshit.
Exactly. However, during his trial later, he contradicted what he said by saying that they were already dead when he returned from prison.
What a shocker. He's changing his story.
It always happens, doesn't it?
Of course.
So an expert asserted that the two girls would not have been able to survive that entire time Dutroux was in prison with the amount of food and water that he claimed they would have been given, assuming Martine gave them any food at all. Now, Dutroux buried the girls' bodies in the garden of a house he owned in Sala-Bouchère, not too far from where he buried his accomplice Weinstein.
Oh.
On the morning of May 28, 1996, Dutroux and Lviev kidnapped a 12-year-old named Sabine Dardenne while she was biking to school.
Ugh.
Sabine spent most of her captivity imprisoned in the dungeon and was repeatedly raped and starved by Dutroux.
Oh.
On August 9th, 1996, Dutroux and Lviev kidnapped 14-year-old Laetitia Delhez as she was walking home from a local swimming pool. Now, an eyewitness observed Dutroux's van during the abduction and was able to describe it to police and even had a partial license plate number.
Okay, that helps.
It didn't just help. Once the police were able to say, okay, here's the van, here's this partial license plate, and they had a list of 30 some odd people, once they saw his name and his criminal history, they were like, that's our guy.
That makes sense. So. Easy.
So, on August 13th, 1996, police raided all of Dutroux's properties simultaneously.
Nice.
Wow.
And they arrested Dutroux, Martine, and Lviev, and an initial search of Dutroux's houses proved inconclusive initially.
What?
But 2 days later, Dutroux and Lviev both made confessions.
Wow.
That's it? Only 2 days?
Only 2 days, but of course his stories kept changing and they were able to keep catching him in lies. And even though he was trying to be quick about his answers and try to cover his tracks, it just became more and more obvious. So at this point,
it's hard to lie that much.
Right.
And for it to be consistent.
So the police, of course, are looking for Laetitia. And that same day, Dutroux led him to the basement dungeon, and inside was Sabine and Laetitia. And both girls were subsequently rescued.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Now, obviously, when this stuff starts going down, the news media is out there, and I've seen the footage of these two girls being led out of that home after being rescued, And it is like,
Oh,
it's heart-wrenching because you can tell
I
just how
can imagine.
traumatized. Yeah, they're traumatized. And there's one really good angle where someone's going through the windshield of the police car and you can see the girls' faces where they're like, there are tears and there's hope, but there's also still that like PTSD of, is this real kind of thing?
right. Like terror of it's just going to start again at any time.
Yeah, it was brutal to watch that, but also very, I mean, it was awesome at the same time, but fucked up. So on August 17th, 1996, Dutroux led police to his house, and with his help, they were able to locate and exhume the bodies of Julie Lejeune, Melissa Russo, and Bernard Weinstein.
I'm surprised he's cooperating.
Well, just wait, because even though I would say we're about halfway through this episode, because this guy and what he claims is crazy.
Holy
Uh-oh.
shit.
And then on September 3rd, the remains of Anne Marshall and Effia Lambrax were located and exhumed at one of his other properties. Hundreds of commercial adult pornographic videos, along with a large number of homemade sex films that Dutroux made with Martine, were recovered from his properties.
Gross.
The public heavily criticized the police for their handling of this case, obviously.
Yes, well, they should have.
Mm-hmm.
The crazy part is, back in 1995, Dutroux's own mother wrote a letter to the authorities stating that she was certain that Dutroux had kidnapped 2 girls and were keeping them at his house.
What the fuck?
And
Wow.
they took no action, obviously.
What?
Yeah. This was a year before he's caught.
That's batshit. I cannot believe that.
It took police 14 months after Julie Lejeune and Melissa Russo were kidnapped to actually arrest Dutroux, although he had supposedly been the prime suspect from the start.
That's batshit.
And of course, as I've stated, during the search for those 2 girls, they didn't find the dungeon door and ignored the locksmith's assertions that he could hear girls screaming. And the officer that conducted that search was later promoted.
Of
What?
course he fucking was. Of course he fucking was.
Detectives, for some reason, at the time that they were doing this search, accepted Dutroux's claim that ongoing construction in his basement was to install a new drainage system. But several videotapes that were found during the search showed video of him building that dungeon. So
Are you fucking joking?
had they bothered to watch it, they would have seen it.
Which you should when you recover material like that. They have teams of people to do that.
Exactly. So Michel Burlet, who was appointed lead investigator, said that some of the videotapes had disappeared after it was taken into evidence and that he wanted them all recovered and reviewed. In October of 1996, Judge Jean-Marc Conneroy was removed from the investigation by the Supreme Court of Belgium due to concerns about his impartiality because he attended a fundraising dinner for the victims' families. So you have an upstanding judge who's doing right by the families of these victims, and he's removed from being the judge at this court because they're saying he's not impartial.
That's awful.
Which
I don't know if
I don't know that I disagree with it either, if that's where you're going with it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, it's kind of hard to say one way or, you know what, I think they did do the right thing, but I don't know, it's weird.
Right. Well, it's just like you should know better than to do something like that. It's like when the police like interfere with a crime scene on accident. It's like you should know better than to do that. That's going to end up discrediting you and that's going to end up fucking with the case.
That's true. And so I guess it's right that they did the right thing and removed him, but it makes me feel dirty. You know what I mean?
It does feel dirty, but yeah, I like think to protect the integrity of the justice system, we have to have stuff like that.
Right. So then another judge, Jean-Claude Van Espen, resigned from the case as the second appointed judge after it was revealed that he had a close relationship with a man named Michael Nihol. And Nihol is one of those names another name I need you to keep in your back pocket. He plays a weird periphery role as we go. So on April 23rd, 1998, Dutroux was finally allowed to view his case files. And when he did so, he was accompanied by 2 police officers. Now, at one point, one of those officers went on a break, and Dutroux overpowered the other officer and was able to escape.
Are you...
Oh my God.
Right? Right? What the fuck?
What the fuck?
However, he was captured just a few hours later. So he is not a Bundy situation.
Okay, good.
So the Minister of Justice, Stefan de Klerk, the Minister of the Interior, Johan van Lanoy, and the police chief all resigned as a result of Dutroux's escape.
As they should.
In 2000, Dutroux received a 5-year sentence for threatening a police officer during his escape, which I think is really funny that he has already been found guilty and sentenced to something before he's even started the trial for these murders.
Right.
Crazy.
But I guess one thing is pretty open and shut.
Yeah, I guess so, yeah. In that dungeon where those 2 girls were being held, they found countless hair samples. Now, Judge Langlois refused to have the hair samples tested for DNA evidence, even though the leading police investigator, Michel Berlot, had begged him to have them analyzed in order to determine how many different people were involved.
That's insane.
Why the hell
I don't
wouldn't they?
understand.
Keep thinking on it, and I'm going to keep going, but I'm definitely going to circle back to exactly why you're confused in a little bit. But if you keep chipping away at where you're thinking, you'll come up with the answer.
Is the judge affiliated?
Okay, what's
my guess?
This is something that I was going to bring up later, but I'm going to go with it now. Do you remember the case we covered in Romania about the girls that were abducted and held by that man? And then he turns himself in after the police waited outside his property for hours as he burned a body.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of, accusations that the higher ups in Romania were part of a sex trafficking ring and that this guy was their fall guy.
Mm-hmm.
I have a feeling this is something very similar.
That would track. Fuck.
Right. So the general prosecutor of the case, Anne Tilley, told investigative journalist Olenka Frenkiel that all the hairs had been tested. Frenkiel claimed to have heard from sources saying otherwise, and then later wrote that, quote, "How could such a senior figure lie so brazenly?" unquote. At least 7 members of law enforcement were arrested on suspicion of having ties to Marc Dutroux. One of them,
Holy crap.
Yeah. One of them was Georgi Zico, a police detective believed to have been an associate of Dutroux. Zico had been charged with truck theft, document forgery, and insurance fraud as a police detective. Fucking crazy.
That's insane. Oh, well, you know what? I'm glad they're holding a fucking police detective accountable.
Eventually,
doesn't happen enough.
No, it definitely does not. Eventually, several families of victims boycotted the trial itself, stating that it was a circus and that no progress had been made since the removal of the first judge.
Damn.
The investigation was also complicated by rivalries between the different law enforcement bodies.
Come on. That's ridiculous.
Both the Gendarmerie, which is like their main police force, and the judicial police carried out their own investigations, and both groups wanted to be the ones to solve the case.
Of course.
Oh my God. Work together, you fucks.
So in particular, the Gendarmerie refused to share tips and information with the judicial police. Most notably was one from an informer that named Dutroux as a suspect and even described the dungeon he had constructed in his basement from one of the houses he owned. Belgian Senator Anne-Marie Leeson commented on the case saying, quote, "Stupidity by the police can't be the only explanation. It's a question of," she said, "it's a question of stupidity, incompetence, and corruption. Dutroux must be a friend of somebody important, or else he was being protected because he was known to be a police informant." Now, Lizen said Dutroux was not a true pedophile as he had been portrayed. She said he he had a record of dealing in stolen cars, selling arms to hoodlums, and trafficking in prostitution. She continued saying that when he discovered that men paid more for little girls for prostitution, that's when he started kidnapping them.
Yeah, at that point, I don't fucking care if you're a pedophile or not. You're an accessory to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You're just as bad. You're, in fact, worse. You're nasty. Fuck off.
Agreed, but we'll get into that too because he is a pedophile. It's
doesn't surprise me.
Both things I think are true. When Dutroux finally was arrested, police found in his house the videotapes of him raping these little girls.
Yep. Okay.
Imagine having to be that investigator to have to watch that.
Awful.
No, thank you. No. He said he made these films so that he could sell them to pedophiles.
Oh.
Well, you still fucking did it, you nasty.
Exactly. In 2009, WikiLeaks published what was called the Dutroux dossier. Belgian authorities tried to have the dossiers taken down. The prosecutor general said, quote, "There is some true, some false, and some very disparate information here involving some people who have done nothing wrong, who have simply been mentioned in an investigation and are thus exposed to public contempt, whereas all this material should have remained classified," unquote. Yeah.
I don't know about that.
I honestly
doesn't seem like it was being handled fucking right.
I was going to say to me that's someone who's trying to cover for a guilty party or is the guilty party.
That's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah. If you've done nothing wrong, then again, shining light in dark places. If you've done nothing wrong, you have nothing to worry about.
Mhm.
So going back a little bit, because those WikiLeaks were in 2009, Dutroux's trial began on March 1st, 2004, roughly 7.5 years after his initial arrest.
That's absurd.
It was a trial by jury with up to 450 people called to testify.
Oh,
whoa.
Yeah.
That's a big. Okay, that makes sense why it took them so long to put together that case. Then,
yeah, 7.5 years, 450. I can't even imagine trying to put this together.
No way.
Yeah, Dutroux was tried for the murders of Anne Marshall, Effie Lembax, and Bernard Weinstein. Dutroux was also charged with a host of other crimes, including auto theft, abduction, attempted murder, attempted abduction, molestation, and 3 unrelated rapes of women from Slovakia. I don't even know where that one comes from. Yeah, right? Now, Martin was tried as his accomplice, as was Liviev, and that man by the name of Michel Nihol, who I mentioned earlier. Now, to protect the accused, these 4 assholes, they were made to sit inside a glass cage during the trial so that no one could, throw things at them, shoot at them, or attack them, I'm assuming. Which, I think that should have been how this whole thing should have gone down. They should have just put them out in the public.
There you go.
You do that to children? Fuck you. You have no rights.
Yeah, you should suffer.
On June 14th, 2004, after a 3-month trial, the jury went into seclusion to reach their verdict on Dutroux and the other 3 accused. After 3 days of deliberation, Dutroux, Martin, and Liviev were found guilty on all charges.
Let's fucking go.
All right, good.
But the jury was unable to reach a verdict on Nihol's role. Dutroux claimed that he was just a low dog on a powerful pedophile network.
Yeah, right.
He further claimed that Michel Nihol was the organizer of all these abductions. Now, Michael Nihol I haven't really talked about. He was a businessman known to frequently attend sex parties. He was accused of being the brains behind this kidnapping thing, the whole operation. His lawyer in the case, Frederick Clement de Clety, denied all charges against Nihol by Dutroux, calling Dutroux a liar and a manipulator, which that is true. He is a liar and a manipulator. But when the investigative journalist Olenka Frenkiel met Nihol in Brussels, he reportedly greeted her with the words, "I am the monster of Belgium." He then... Yep.
That's really brazen.
He told her that he was certain he would never be prosecuted. And during that encounter, he continuously grabbed at her, tickled her, and would pull her into him, so much so that she had to call her colleagues to help her get away from him.
Holy fucking shit.
That's creepy.
This is all while you're being, you're on trial and you're being interviewed by a news reporter, and that's how you're going to fucking behave. What the fuck?
That's insane.
Yeah, crazy. While admitting to some of these abductions, Dutroux denied being a murderer, even though he had already confessed to killing Bernard Weinstein. He said that he did torture and abuse the girls, but denied killing any of them until the very end. Dutroux further denied kidnapping, raping, and murdering Julie Lejeune and Melissa Russo. He did, however, admit to incarcerating them at his houses, claiming that he had done so to protect them, the girls, from this powerful and sinister child sex ring. So, he's the hero.
Oh, yeah.
That's bad shit.
What the fuck? But even despite this, he contradicts himself because he admits to the abduction and rape of the other girls. He also admits to burying his accomplice, Bernard Weinstein, alive for, quote, letting the girls die, unquote. Dutroux further said that 2 unidentified policemen had taken part with him in the kidnapping of Anne Michel and Effia Lambrax. Dutroux admitted to kidnapping Sabine and raping her. He admitted to kidnapping and raping Letitia Delhez, but he claimed that he had not handed her over to Nicole to spare her from the fate that the other girls suffered.
Wow, so fucking generous.
What?
Now, his wife, Michelle Martin, testified that Dutroux and Weinstein had kidnapped Lejeune and Russo. She also said that Dutroux had told her that he had murdered Weinstein. And Martin further said that Dutroux and Weinstein had killed Anne Michel and Effia Lambrax. So she's basically undercutting everything they're saying. She's probably the only one fully cooperating.
Probably.
Now, she said that Dutroux had already decided that he was going to start abducting girls back in 1985 because he believed that it was easier to abduct and rape girls than trying to start to have affairs with them.
What kind of twisted, fucked up bullshit is that?
Honestly, it sounds...
And you stayed with him?
Right? And not only that, tell me that's not the way incels think.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, fucked up.
Makes me want to fucking die.
Now, she said that this way, and then by abducting these girls, that he would have more resources and time to spend with her, Martine, so that she had to help him with these abductions.
My jaw's on the fucking floor.
I can't imagine being so dependent on someone that you're going to help him do this just so he has more time to spend with you. It's crazy.
Yeah, I have no fucking words. That's so depraved.
So Belgium had abolished the death penalty in 1996, but a majority of Belgians at the time of his trial would have supported Dutroux receiving the death penalty.
Mm-hmm.
On July 22nd, 2004, Dutroux received the maximum sentence of life imprisonment, while Martine received 30 years and Liviev 25 years.
They should all be fucking for life.
Agreed. The jury was asked to go back into seclusion to decide whether or not Nihol was an accomplice. Nihol was acquitted of kidnapping and conspiracy charges, but he was convicted of drug-related charges and received 5 years imprisonment. He was released in spring of 2006.
He must have been really well connected because they weren't able to get evidence
And
to
he
really
knew
convict
it.
him.
And he knew it. He told
He
the
knew it.
reporter. Yeah. He resided in Zeebrugge until his death on October 23rd, 2019. And I'm going to guess he probably needed to live alone and in seclusion. But
Yeah. I'm surprised no one vigilante killed him.
right? The whole town should have.
For real.
On August 19th, 2012, about 2,000 people in Brussels demonstrated against Martine's possible early release from prison, but to no avail. She has since been paroled, 16 years into her sentence and was released into the care of the Poor Clares of Maloney, which is like a
The
convent.
fuck?
Right? Why are you letting her out?
Is she like on her fucking deathbed?
No, not at all. Because listen to this. She was given shelter there, although she was not considered part of their community, because it's a convent. The sisters there declared that they were not her guardian, and shelter was only given under the condition that she would not violate the conditions of her parole. Since then, the convent has been sold, and she has had to find a new shelter, or she had to go back to prison. Unbelievably, a former judge turned one of his former farmhouses into an apartment, and that's where she now lives.
Oh, that's fucked.
Yeah, wow.
I don't know what kind of spell this woman wove, but what the fuck?
Yeah,
well,
that's
just definitely another fucking accomplice.
And on February 4th, 2013, Dutroux requested an early release from prison. He insisted that he was no longer dangerous and wanted to be released into house arrest with an ankle bracelet placed on him.
Fuck you, dude.
The court denied his request.
Okay.
Oh, good.
Yeah, right. Could you imagine? That'd be like us letting
that would've
Charles
been-
Manson out. It's never going to happen.
Right, I can't believe they let that other bitch out on parole. That's bad shit.
Agreed. Like, she was just as guilty as the rest. Maybe she didn't like rape these girls, but she was right there with him.
I just like really don't give a fuck whether you did it yourself or not. You made it possible. So
Exactly.
rot.
So Dutroux is currently being held in solitary confinement in the prison of Nivelles. On October 29th of 2019, Dutroux won a pre-parole right to a psychiatric assessment, which was supposed to take place in May of 2020, but was delayed due to COVID-19.
We love a few things that are good that come of COVID.
Right? Now, Dutroux' case was so infamous between the years of 1996 and 1998 that over 1/3 of Belgians with the surname Dutroux applied to have their names changed.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think I would have done the same.
Same.
Yeah, most definitely.
Belief in a pedophile network, which included high-ranking members of the Belgian establishment and a conspiracy to keep it hidden, became widespread in Belgium.
I believe it too.
Press reports claim that prior to his removal, Judge Connereau was on the verge of publicly disclosing the names of high-level government officials who had been recognized on those videotapes that may or may not have disappeared.
Wow.
Exactly. So yeah, sure, he attended a fundraiser for victims' families, but I think there was more to it than that.
100%.
Connereau had said that the businessman Michael Niho was the brains behind the kidnapping operation, and that he would testify in trial that there had been high-level murder plots to stop the investigation.
Wow.
Investigators also believed that Dutroux and Niho were planning on a long-distance prostitution trafficking network involving cars and the import of girls from Slovakia, although no evidence was ever actually uncovered.
Oh.
Dutroux's lawyer, Xavier Magny, said that during the trial proceedings, quote, "I speak not only as a lawyer, but also as a citizen and father. He was not the only devil. Out of 600 hair samples that were found in the basement cellar, some were the victims, but there were 25 unknown DNA profiles that were discovered. There were people...
What the actual fuck?
Yep. There were people in that cellar that are now not accused." Unquote.
That's fucked. It's so fucked.
The prosecution never attempted to match those DNA profiles to people implicated in the case, and the focus was placed on the material wealth of Dutroux and how he owned as many houses as he did.
Insane. They're all fucking complicit.
He was worth a total of 6 million Belgian francs. And while he had all this wealth and property, he also received public assistance of $1,200 a month, which we talked about.
Which is like immaterial compared to his wealth.
Right. Documents released by WikiLeaks show that large sums of money in different currencies arrived in Michelle Martin's bank account and claimed that they were linked in time to the disappearances of the abductions of the girls. So basically, when these girls went missing, money went into this account. So both the transfers and the value of the properties that Dutroux owned suggested to investigators that he was financed by a larger pedophile or prostitution ring. Now, journalist...
That tracks.
It absolutely does. And I go back to that case with Alexandra Messino. I can't remember her name now. The girl from Alexandra from Romania. We covered her case. It just really reminds me of that so much. And there really is a big problem in Europe with trafficking. Not that there isn't one here, but I think it's bigger in Europe.
More borders, more places to traffic.
Exactly. Journalist Olenka Frenkiel claims that more than 20 potential witnesses in the case have died under mysterious circumstances.
What?
Yep.
This is so fucked.
She cites Bruno Tagliaferro as an example. He was found dead after claiming to have knowledge of the abduction vehicle used by Dutroux. And though Tagliaferro's cause of death was ruled as a heart attack, American analysts later determined that he had been poisoned. Frankiel's article alleges that Tagliaferro's wife, who was determined to find her husband's killer, was also reportedly found dead as well after her mattress had been set on fire.
Whoa.
Oh, God.
Fucking weird.
Okay.
So, again, my take on this is there's definitely a bigger conspiracy, or at least there was back in the 90s and 2000s. I seriously doubt something like this would go away. But that is the case of Marc Dutroux.
Oh, my good God.
Utterly fucked.
Yeah. I have no words because human trafficking is awful and child human trafficking is even worse. And yet I do believe that there's a network of it, and I do believe that governments are complicit in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I think government. I think
definitely.
it's like it's wealth. At the end of the day, it's who has wealth, who has power to get away with this shit.
Right.
And that's why we know wealthy people do. That's why we know people in the government do, because they're paid off by the same people. It's just
right. Like how many people turn blind eyes to what Diddy Combs was doing?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Exactly.
I don't know if we've talked about this in past episodes, but I saw a little interview with Howard Stern of all people, and he said that he was at a Diddy party and he tried to go downstairs to whatever was happening down there, and he was turned away. And
Really?
Yeah, and he was offended by it, and he was talking about it in an interview after the fact, and he was like, "I guess I'm lucky I didn't get to go down those fucking stairs."
Yeah.
It's crazy because the wealthy do whatever the fuck they want, and they think they can do it forever, and eventually they get caught, or hopefully they don't get caught.
Not necessarily. We don't. The thing is about the ones who don't get caught is we don't fucking know.
That's true, because every time we turn around, it's some new thing. Yeah.
Yep.
Fucking crazy. But yeah, so sorry to ruin your nights, guys.
Yeah, honestly, this was a particularly rough one. And just knowing how many people got away with this and continued to be in positions of power in the government and in whatever else positions of power they're in.
The amount of coercion and the amount of manipulation and it was sick.
And turning a blind eye to what is at best incompetence and at worst, like, I don't know, a willingness to turn a blind eye. Like the cop.
Yeah, that's
when that locksmith heard people crying for help and they don't even investigate.
Yeah, that was sickening. I couldn't believe that.
Like I hear something. If I hear something that I think sounds weird in my apartment, I investigate. I know I'm the only one here. So I don't know. It blows my mind. If you know you're with a guy who abducted kids and someone thinks they hear someone screaming, you should look into that.
Yup.
So fucked up.
Just all sounds very purposeful.
Yep. Everything. The whole step of the way. So I'm not saying that the current Belgium government is guilty, but they certainly were back then. That's my hot take.
Mm-hmm. And they certainly inherit some of that.
Agreed. And because everything passes down, and I'm sure there's plausible deniability, but fuck all that.
Right. And there's always like the crossover time. It's like they've all met each other. Like everyone in the current government has met everyone in the past government because there was always pass downs of shit, and it's just like, nah, I don't believe.
Yeah.
Well, and
I don't
hopefully
believe that they're.
they've learned from that negligence and that stupidity from the other regimes.
Yeah, hopefully.
Or they've participated in it.
Right, because it's only
True.
20 years ago. It's not like we're talking 50 or 100 years ago.
Some people are in Congress for fucking 60 years.
That's true too.
I'm exaggerating. I don't really know if that's the answer, but some people are in Congress or like are in the government for a really long time, especially when there's no term limits.
Exactly. Like our own Supreme Court is a lifetime thing. So who the hell knows what Belgium's like? So, but yeah. So thank you everyone for listening. Again, I apologize for ruining your nights if that's what we did, but thank you for joining us anyway. Once again, I am Janice Dead.
I'm Jameson Dead.
And I'm Joyous Dead.
And we'll see you next week.
Bye.